Okay, here we are. We're ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So, my name's Dylan. Here we are in my psychotherapy office in beautiful Boulder, Colorado. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I have a private therapy practice, and I'm a part-time instructor at Naropa University's Graduate School of Clinical Mental Health Counseling, where I teach mindfulness classes, Gestalt classes, and Introduction to Counseling Skills classes. Although that job's a little up in the air right now. I'm also just a crazy motherfucker and didn't show up to class a few weeks ago because I relapsed. I was drunk. Some fallout about that. The irony is my students are emailing my boss right now advocating for me to stay at the university, but I might lose the job anyways because of financial restructuring. However, the students think I might lose my job because of my performance of my drunkenness. However, they're all advocating for me, so I just got an email from my boss saying I should think it's very nice of them that they appreciate me as an instructor so much. It's Naropa University, for God's sakes. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, the drunken Rinpoche of the Kagyu mishap lineage from Tibet, was the founder. I'm just living in the spirit of the sacred warrior. He'd be proud. He'd be proud. These instructors that are good at the fucking emails and the Canvas and the administration, they're the ones you should worry about. Also, I made a mistake, and I want to make that right. I really mean that. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about. That's just my brief introduction and part of my present moment experience. And I think there's this like common misconception, or at least this vibe I get from clients and people in the public, like, oh, you're a therapist, like you must have your shit together. Wrong. Therapists often have their shit together, the least. Some of them really do, though. And in my better moments, I do, but I'm just a high variance person and a young man trying to find stability. So that's a little bit about me, but we're talking about what it means to be human in the age of AI. I wanted to start by telling a story, I guess, about how I got keen to this a number of years ago. It was 2019, maybe it was 2018, I can't remember. I was an undergraduate at Naropa. It took me fucking 10 years to finish my undergraduate degree, dropping in and dropping out of college. But I ended up at Naropa University to finish my undergrad, and I was studying contemplative psychology, kind of like Buddhist psychology. And I was driving on I-70, listening to the Sam Harris podcast, and he had Andrew Yang on. Sam Harris, well-known public intellectual, and followed his work for a long time, and lots to be said about Sam Harris. Very controversial and likes the sound of his own voice, as Ian likes to say. He's kind of up his own ass sometimes, but nonetheless, good content. And he had Andrew Yang on the podcast, and it was kind of like, I don't know if Andrew Yang was like announcing his run for presidency on the podcast or had just announced, but he was in his like announcement run for the presidency in the Democratic primary. And it was like a foregone conclusion. Andrew Yang knew he probably wasn't going to get the actual nomination, but he was running as a matter of raising an issue into the public consciousness. And his policy platform was UBI, Universal Basic Income. And his thesis, and he's kind of an entrepreneur type and has worked in Silicon Valley, and he sort of saw the writing on the wall. He saw AI as a coming threat to the workforce. And he saw this massive displacement on the horizon. And the question was, what are we going to do for our people when they don't have jobs? And at the time, I cursorily followed AI. Like, I'm not an expert in that at all, but this was 2018, 2019. No one in the public was talking about AI. This was not what it is now in 2026 at all. The parameters of I don't even know. I think maybe at the time I'm thinking like attention is all you need was the paper about attention transformers that unlocked the power of large language models. I don't even know if that paper had been written yet, but we were on our way. If I'm thinking like the parameters of the models that were being trained at the time, if there were any, they were in the millions or hundreds of millions of parameters of these neural nets that were being trained. Now I think Elon is talking about 100 billion parameter model for Grok, for his LLM now. Anyways, this is just to say like the power of these things was not apparent as it is now, but Andrew Yang sort of saw it, like he was a visionary and saw it and wanted to solve this problem with a policy solution of UBI. And like, that's a whole other topic we could talk about one day, like public policy around these topics, like the intersection of technology and AI and economics. But it really had me thinking. He convinced me. I was like, damn, like that's true. And I started to ponder this, and I was like, let's imagine a world. Like I started to get kind of scared, frankly. I was like, yeah, whoa, like what does that mean for my future? I was like 27, 28 at the time. And I was like, what does that mean for my future? And so the question dawned on me is like, imagine a world where all cognitive labor is done by machines. Like everything that humans can do with their brains and on a computer screen can be done by an artificial intelligence system. It's like, imagine like, what's left over? Like you do the gold pan shake. It's like, what falls out? Like what is left for us to do? And it's easy to start to get kind of dystopian about this, certainly. And I'll add, like, at the time, in 2018, 19, like the self-driving car thing was like a huge concern, especially self-driving truckers. Like trucking, I think, is the #1 profession for adult men without a college degree or something. Like it's crazy. There's like, and it pays really well. So like, there's a specific demographics that might get hurt. But anyways, the physical AI, that's the next move, right? Like right now we're in this agentic AI revolution that is just starting to take hold. The next maneuver will be the physical AI, which will be self-driving cars and ultimately robots. So there's also the question, not only what does a world look like when there is no cognitive labor left for us to do, but what does a world look like when there's no physical labor left for us to do? I wasn't pondering that question in 2018 and 2019. It was just the cognitive question. And there was a time when I thought I wanted to be like a lawyer or some shit, but I had burned too many brain cells and gotten too many arrests to think about honestly going to law school. But I was already on this track of like at Naropa, like studying contemplative psychology and on this track to maybe be a therapist. And I thought, oh, that could be a thing, right? Like I don't see the machine, the artificial intelligence system replicating human to human empathic connection, at least yet. I mean, in the medium term horizon, like maybe our lifetime, I thought, okay, like what's going to be left over? So cognition, what's happening in cognition? There's many ways to talk about cognition. One philosophical way to talk about it is its conceptual knowledge. Okay, the Kantians might say this is synthetic knowledge or something like. So concepts is a dualistic, conceptual knowledge is embedded in the dualistic understanding of the world. It's either this or that. And we give these things words, and then we perform cognitive labor, logical interactions between these things to spit out some output. Okay. It's not merely logical relationships that form cognitive labor. It's also probabilistic relationships. And interestingly, that's actually how certainly the first generation of generative AI works, is it mimics this neural net where there's a probabilistic output of what's the next most likely token. Human brains, Bayesian probability, function of human cognition, work in very similar ways. So there's both this deductive logical thing happening, and then there's also this probabilistic thing happening. But the main idea here is that it's working with conceptual knowledge of the world. So then the Buddhist psychology, and at least the Buddhist psychology I was studying at the time, taught me about this thing called non-conceptual mind. And to even begin to talk about it, we are putting concepts on it. So it's ironic to even talk about it, but we can point our fingers at it, and we can certainly have experiences of it. In fact, we're having a non-conceptual experience all the time. Big side quest, like one of the most, I think, articulate thinkers in this is Ian McGilchrist, in his book, The Master and His Emissary, drawing distinction between the left and right hemisphere's brain, and the right hemisphere's role of being the master, if you will, and understanding the gestalt of experience rather than the details of experience. So that's another way to start to think about non-conceptual mind, is McGilchrist's work on the right hemisphere mode of attention of the mind. But so non-conceptual knowledge, that was my thought, is like, okay, I don't see the artificial intelligence systems being able to reconfigure or genuinely or in some way like work with non-conceptual knowledge. At best, they can mimic it. And that's what the left hemisphere does too. The left hemisphere mimics. It's like, I don't know, there's something deep here about like notions of authenticity. Like we can just feel it when someone's being authentic, we just get a sense of it. Anyways, the artificial intelligence systems, I thought, okay, they're not going to be able to do non-conceptual knowledge. And so in a world where cognitive labor becomes commodified, that essentially all cognitive labor, I just saw it in 2018, it's like, it's going to cost the cost of electricity ultimately. Which for all intents and purposes, if we fucking distributed our resources properly, is essentially free. The sun is just giving us that. And so that's going to produce the tokens that are the cognitive labor. So that becomes free. Okay. So in an economy where something is free, the things that aren't free become the valued, right? So what becomes more rarefied in that economy is non-conceptual work. And so what is non-conceptual work? Okay. There's meditative experiences, there's psychedelic experiences, there's experiences in nature, experiences of awe and wonder and flow, which not necessarily have to happen in nature. They also happen during live experiences, live in-person experiences. What else is non-conceptual? Love, rapturous, rapture with other human beings, and like truly empathic understanding, like those moments of being deeply understood and weeping in the presence of another person. It's like, oh, okay. Well, like those are some things that are human that maybe we should double down on. And so that was like the premise to like start investigating this and start this career as a therapist. My first thought was like, oh, we need to like embed this into businesses, and I did this like business consulting thing where I brought meditation programs to workplaces, and it didn't take off, probably because I didn't take off and I was half-assing stuff. And I still am half-assing stuff, but I'd like to full-ass stuff more. So that's the framing of the question. That's sort of my story about how I started wondering it, is like, what does it mean to be human in the age of AI? What is left over when all cognitive labor is done by machines? And yeah, now the question is like, what is left over when all physical labor is done by machines? But essentially, I think it's the same kind of answer. It's the same kind of answer. And then we need to articulate this case. That's the thing. There's not a lot of work being done. You know, there's literally $1 trillion being spent this year in capital expenditures by the hyperscaler companies building out the physical infrastructure for AI, the data centers, the chips, etc. And soon we'll have data centers in space. We're literally going to build a Dyson sphere soon, I think. But we're not spending $1 trillion on researching the question or like funding the type of work that would create an infrastructure for these non-conceptual, more, I'm going to call them human things that we have the capacity for. So we need to articulate this case in a more robust way. So that's sort of my exigence, my sort of some of the thesis of the stuff I want to talk about. I think I'm done with that topic for now.
Cool. Do you mind if I just kind of pep you with the question at the end?
Yeah, give me all the questions.
I'll be sure to write some more down for next time. But I was actually just talking with a friend last time over the weekend, and it's so interesting that you had a fucking like producer on Sam, like questions to say questions with Dylan. Is when that you kind of had the premonition of the commodification and the utility structure of knowledge in 2018.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Sam Altman, if not last year, this year, acknowledged that that's what they want their model to be, is they want to be able to have people pay for the utility that knowledge will become.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what we're talking about. Like it's turning knowledge, cognitive labor, I'll call it. Like,
do you want to rephrase that question? Or just kind of repeat the question a little bit, just kind of like the idea of like the commodification of knowledge, AI, or like viewing AI, knowledge in AI as a utility.
Sure.
For the future.
Yeah, so the question is about turning knowledge, AI, artificial intelligence system, turning knowledge into a commodity or a utility. And you said that Sam Altman essentially said that that's part of the vision, is allowing people to do that. And yeah, so what are utilities? Well, like electricity, water, the internet, maybe it's not technically regulated as a utility, but essentially is. Yeah, and these things are, they cost money, but they're so cheap that it's like they're public access essentially. Yeah, it's like weird to even think about. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean when you can just like turn on the intelligence switch?
Going off of that, and then we'll go to the next topic. This is me just being curious. I also heard something, could have been on Sam Harris. They're talking about like, I think it was like Tristan Harris talking about this, like breaking down like why companies are spending so much money, or rationalizing how companies are spending so much money on scaling these models and like what that means, and ultimately like what could be the only thing that's financially solvent for them to be trying to achieve, which is
Right.
ultimately being able to replace the entire labor force.
Right.
Like that would rationalize the amount of money expenditure taking place right now. And so I guess that then kind of dovetails into your recognizing the physical component of AI as well, like, you know, being manifested into the actual labor force.
Right.
Not really a question, more of just like a thought.
Yeah. So the question or the thought about like what is the economics of this thing? Like what justifies this level of capital expenditure and like investment into these systems? And Tristan Harris, as Ian says, thinks that it's the replacement of the labor force and productivity done by these agents, these machines, rather than humans. I think there's some merit to that. Yeah. Gosh, like this, my mind is going a number of different directions. Like, I think in this moment in time, like there's so much disruption and change is happening. It's like there's like fear of displacement of the entire workforce and people losing jobs and the income inequality that's going to be exacerbated that already exists. And then like there's like this dystopian kind of future of 20, 30, 50% unemployment, et cetera, where UBI would almost become a political necessity. And then there's other sides of the ledger, like we're going to grow at 10% a year. And like, you know, the benefit isn't that the companies are going to displace labor. The reason they're investing in all of this is because they're going to reap the rewards of such a huge boon and growth of the economy, and like people are going to retool. Anyways, these are like medium term at best, like short term maybe. Like this is like our lifetime we're talking about. And yeah, it's going to be like a trough. It's going to be like a difficult thing. And then people talk about the disruption that's going to happen. And then like a maybe possibly like a more positive vision on the other side of that, if we can get to the other side of it. But I want to challenge us to like think bigger, like thinking the long term, like thinking the far future of these systems. Like what are we actually building here? And there's the sort of possibilities. Once you start to think in terms of like what's not going to happen in 10, 20, 50, or 100 years, you start to think about what's going to happen in 1,000 years or 10,000 years or 100,000 years. And we can think in these terms. Like we think about 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago was the Middle Ages. We think about 2,000 years ago. This was ancient Greek. We think about 200,000 years ago. This was like, I don't know, early human tribes, maybe. And we stand, like these technologies stand at a transitional point. Nick Bostrom calls it like the great filter. Like there's sort of periods of civilizational history where we either survive or don't. And so you think about surviving this period, this filter with nuclear weapons and AI and the antecedent consequences of that. And to imagine it's like you have to be fictional. You have to be science fiction about imagining what a future might look like 10,000 years from now when these systems continue to develop. And that's something that I've pondered a lot about and I've just thought a lot about. Yeah, it starts to get kind of trippy. So the question of like, you know, the displacement of the workforce, like that's the proximal question. yes, it's the questions about these companies making money. That's the proximal question. But then I would challenge us to also consider what it means in the far future.